Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, wherever and whenever you may be. This is Geoff with episode 6 of Parkinson's with Geoff. It's been a couple of weeks since a podcast was posted. I did promise once per week, but as I mentioned on the social media postings, I needed to just slow down my workload a little bit, getting a bit too much for my pea brain. The social media world is all new to me, and it only exists to promote people finding the podcast, which I hope they are doing, and finding it of value. I can see the number of downloads. They're not where I would like them to be. But honestly, as long as one person gets one thing out of it, then it's worth it. You know, that's what it's all about. And is 2 weeks ago to the day, I believe, the episode that was posted was part 3 of episode 5, which was a 3-part series of interviews with speech therapist Gail Walter, who gave us a much better understanding from a medical expert's point of view of how Parkinson's disease pathology works. We also talked about aphasia, which is something that I have in a mild version at the moment, and hopefully will stay that way. That's the point of doing all these exercises and things that we've been talking about and will continue to talk about. And it was very insightful. So, again, I really want to thank Gail for her time, and her and the team at Speech Avenues in Rockledge, Florida, really have grown their practice tremendously. They have a licensed school there now. They're teaching nonverbal children and things like that. But what I also wanted to make sure you got out of that series of interviews is the term speech therapy, because as most of you like to point out, Geoff, the only therapy you need for speech is to do less of it. Fair enough, but I deserve that. It's not a fair representation of what speech therapy actually does for someone with Parkinson's. Yes, it does, of course, work on things like swallowing, because ultimately at the end of the day, and you know what I mean by that, it is the lack of ability to swallow that really takes you downhill with Parkinson's. So they start off right away with exercises to make sure that your swallowing is something that is continually exercised, monitored, and it's much more than a weekly consultation. This takes a lot of work, this program. It's kind of a way of living. And between that and the other exercises that I do, I'm not talking about physical exercise, I'm talking about Parkinson-specific exercise. It probably takes 2 hours of my day, at least, every day, to do them all, assuming I do them all like a good boy, which I'm not always, I admit that, and most of you know that anyway. But that's really what it takes. It is you have a condition for life. So for life, you have to work on it, right? You have to make sure you do everything you can to keep it at bay. So speech therapy gets into, of course, swallowing, talking, cognitive, and it does in a very clever way. And the framework that Gail uses at Speech Avenues is for the Parkinson's Voice Project and their program that's called Live with Intent. So that is one of the resources that I have referenced in the website, parkinsonswithjeff.com. So you can always find out more about them. And as I mentioned before, we may have one of the senior folks from that very excellent group join us on one of these podcasts in the next 2 to 3 weeks, potentially. So let's see if we can do that, because they'll offer even further insight. So the purpose of this episode, at the end, it's number 6, is to get back to the basics. The basics and the premise of the podcast was to share what I'm experiencing, so that people with Parkinson's that are not as how do I say this politely, not as chronologically wise as I am, and also from an external appearance standpoint, although I may look odd to some people, but I'm also not yet at a stage where I'm doing a lot of shaking. I generally can walk without much help. There are some days I call my wobbly days, as you know. You've heard me talk about that, where I need to use my cane. But sometimes I just like to use that to hit people on the head. But from all external appearances, you would not assume that I have Parkinson's, and therefore when I seem to get confused about things, you might wonder what is wrong with him, which is a good question. And if you ask me, I would tell you. And if you ask me, why did you buy a can of dog food for a dog that you don't have? All I can tell you is, I don't know. At that point in time, I thought I had a dog, which I don't. So then the choice was go to the rescue shelter and give a can of dog food away, or get a dog to eat the dog food. And I chose to go to the rescue shelter and get rid of the dog food and not pick up a dog. So stuff happens, and you don't know when it's going to happen. And you have to be prepared for it. You have to have these tools and strategies at hand. You have to be able to deal with them. You have to. It's beyond just making lists. I mean, that's how I initially started out before I met Gail and went through the. Well, actually, you never stopped going through the Live with Intent program, but I had a counter covered with yellow Post-it notes. First of all, the challenge there is I've got to remember to look at them, as well as actually execute what they say on them. So, and for those of you in management and leadership roles, I think a lot of you can relate. So, we have these Post-it notes that we scribble down in a hurry, and suddenly we have a desk full of posts. At least I did. A lot of you much better organized than I am. You got it all electronically, and some electronic version of them will pop up, and your life will magically flow, and you'll hit that 8-hour day. And please let me know how that is achievable, because I never did, even before I had any clue that I had Parkinson's disease. So let's just talk briefly about what has happened with me over the last couple of weeks, but I think I caused some concern, and I certainly didn't mean to. When I said I was backing off from social media, I got a couple of emails and texts and things from people saying, "Are you okay? What's going on? Are you gone?" And no. Just need to back off and let the battery cool down a little bit and slow down the pace, you know. But I still intend to get a podcast out once per week, because the podcast is not overly complex to do. It costs me a little bit of money to host it and post it and all that kind of stuff. And now I've given it a 1 month push through the social media channels, and I will still post those occasionally, but my good friend Anup that was helping me in September, he has other much bigger, more important projects to do, so he's moved on to there, so I'm flying solo with all that stuff, and honestly, I don't know why stuff disappears after 24 hours. What's a reel, what's a story, and no idea. I just would like to get my point across, and you know, where it ends up in the ether of the of cyberspace is beyond me. But certainly an interesting social experiment. But again, the fact that I'm on Facebook and people have connected with me that I haven't spoken to for a long time is very heartwarming. So thank you to those of you that have. And you can always subscribe to the podcast, and that is done via contact me at parkinsonswithgeoff.com. All right, so what's happened? Well, it was about 2 weeks ago that the hurricane, well, there's a classic, I can't even remember the name of the hurricane that went through my part of Florida. It wasn't a very cool name, I remember that. Ah, yes, it was Milton. So I apologize to anyone listening whose name is Milton. Okay, I'm not trying to say you've got an uncool name. No, my point was, you know, if I'm going to get killed or my house wiped away, I'd like it done by a hurricane that's got a sexy name like, I don't know, Celeste or actually, we go up in the alphabet through the hurricane season, so we would be at N. So I don't know, pick a name that's sexy for you, Nadia, whatever. Now people are thinking, oh yeah, Geoff, who do you know who's Nadia? No, I don't. Yes, yeah, that's the Russian spy I used to date in Moscow 10 years ago. Come on, guys. So, what was interesting, though, about that hurricane, remember that Parkinson's, as I've said and as Gail described, Parkinson's primarily resides in the extrapyramidal system part of the brain, which is kind of like the automatic part. It lives in the back of your brain. And it's the lack of dopamine that is the primary problem. And the dopamine, excuse me, is produced by these glands called Pons glands, P-O-N-S. And there's just simply not enough of it. And even the medications that are typical with Parkinson's, carbidopa, levodopa, which has been around for a long time, it does nothing. You don't feel any effect from it, although you will start to notice when it wears off. Why? Because you start to feel tired. You start to feel demotivated. And the reality of that is, unless you've done a lot of physical work that day, you you are probably not tired. If you've done a regular amount of physical movement and you got an okay night's sleep, you probably are not tired. But the lack of dopamine is telling your brain you are tired. And that's why carbidopa is spaced out during the that's a wrong use of words. The interval of taking carbidopa is breakfast, lunch, evening, and then a nighttime extended release to try and keep that dopamine level from dropping too low. And certainly, you do notice when that level is low, your fatigue level is very high. I know I still have, even with the carbidopa, I do have times when I just have to lie down, and I intend to only have a half-hour nap, and there's just never enough. It's 2 hours of close to unconsciousness. I'm sleeping through alarms, and that's not great. It certainly is it's very difficult to hold down any job, let alone a high level executive job, when that happens. But it doesn't happen every day, and it does happen a little bit less than it used to, thanks to medication adjustments and also the tools that and strategies that I've been employing. And again, I can't stress this enough. The main thing is, okay, if the extrapyramidal system is a problem, then what do you do? Okay, what do you do when there's a car accident on the road? Yeah, other than you have a look to see what happened. Yeah, we know that. But you go around it. Okay, so go around the extrapyramidal system. Rewire your brain. It's called neuroplasticity. You do things with intent more and more, and you'll bypass that. You'll bring things to the front part of your brain, and you will suffer less from these periods of fatigue and confusion. I'm not saying they'll stop, but they should stabilize. Maybe they'll ease for a little bit. Remember, Parkinson's doesn't stop. It could stabilize for a long time, or it might pick up and run like a racehorse tomorrow. We don't know yet. There have been some good advances in medicine, but today still no cure. And I'm sure we'll put. We probably already have AI working on it, along with all the other good doctors and scientists working on it. So I'm sure one day we'll get there, but today we're not there. So we manage it as best we can. Right, that's what we have to do. So, of course, I've lost my train of thought, but I'm allowed to do that. Oh, so the hurricane. Hurricane Milton. What was interesting about that is because it's not a normal situation. Yes, I know everyone has a vision of Florida being hit permanently with hurricanes, and it has had a couple of big ones this year. And normally they come in from the Gulf side, and I've got friends on the Gulf side that have had damage to their house, unfortunately, and lots of people have. And Milton then went up and ripped apart North Carolina, not even as a hurricane, but as a rain event. Just terrible destruction up there. But on the eastern side of Florida, we do get hurricanes. Generally, they're not as strong, not as frequent, and not as severe. So, and actually, by the time Milton got to us from the west, it had rapidly started to lose some steam. But it was still a full blown emergency event, and we had to prepare for it. So, did prepare. And what's interesting about that is all of the things that you're doing to prepare and deal with the situation. None of them are things that you do every day. Therefore, they're not really using much of the extrapyramidal system. They are by default. You're doing them with intent. And lo and behold, you find that, I found anyway, that I really, for probably 2 days, and I had very, very little sleep over those 2 days, as you can imagine, I was able to function at a pretty, normal level, and also help some others that needed help, and I love to do that, and it was great. The hurricane wasn't great, but being able to help others was great, and there wasn't that much damage, and we're very fortunate. And it's then that it hits you, when it starts to subside, you realize, wow, yeah, I was taking my Parkinson's medications as usual. But in those 2 days, despite my lack of sleep, I didn't feel the need to crash for 2 or 3 hours. Of course, as it all started to come to an end, just the natural lack of sleep, forced me to crash and slow down for a bit. So, but there's some empirical, I always get that word wrong, evidence that if you can bypass the extrapyramidal system, it certainly is helpful in dealing with your Parkinson's symptoms day to day. So you've got to make it a way of life, and that's why it takes so much time each day to do the exercises that you're meant to do. And there are several of them. There are the live with intent exercises, which are my primary framework from the Parkinson's Voice Project, and administered and overseen by Gail, who's not just a licensed speech therapist, but also is a authorized listen with intent coach. I'm not sure what the right term actually is. So there's that, but there's other things that I do for myself, which were recommended by my neurologist and by Gail. Things like Brain HQ, which is a scientific cognitive app on the phone, which takes you through many, many different exercises and works different parts of your brain simultaneously and gradually increases difficulty and monitors your progress. And if things look like they're getting too easy, it will increase the difficulty level, and it does everything from sharpen your focus, increase your short-term memory capability, all those type of things. But you have to do it every day, just like physical exercise. If you want to stay fit, you need to do that every day. You don't run around the athletic track once and say, that's good, I'm done for the rest of my life now. That doesn't make any sense, does it? The same thing with Parkinson's. We're trying to rewire the brain. That's not easy to do. So it does take time. Now, let's apply that to my current situation. So I've taken a few days off. I'm out of town. I'm in a different town, one that I'm not familiar with, and of course, living in Eastern Florida, it's extremely flat. And yes, I do have my wobbly days, but everything is flat. I mean, the highest thing around me is a freeway on ramp, for heaven's sake. And now the town that I'm in, which I'm not familiar with, the shops and things like that, there's all kinds of different architecture here built over different periods of time. And as a result, there are a lot of steps. When I say steps, I don't mean like steps up, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 to go up in. No, I just mean a step, because a building is at a different level to the street or the sidewalk, whatever the case may be, or the sidewalk onto the road. Sometimes, that step off is 2 inches. Sometimes it's 8 inches, and I'm having difficulty with that. Certainly, part of it is not being used to it, but whereas before, and this is now moving more towards the motor side of things, whereas before, my sensory inputs would have detected something's different here. I've got to put my foot down further, or whatever the case may be, or lift it up further to get into this shop. And much to the amusement of the locals, I'm sure, I've had in the last 2 days 3 or 4 wipeouts because I'm not able to get my legs to deal with these steps, which aren't, they're not big steps. And I actually find it quite amusing myself, but I got a couple of scratches and things on me. It's no big deal. But they probably wonder who is this imbecile that can't even get into a coffee shop without falling over, or out. Apparently, that was very interesting. So that is something that I would never have had a problem with before, ever. It would be an automatic adjustment, and it goes hand in hand with the lower half of my body is where most of my motor skill problems, when they do occur, are most prevalent. For example, I don't feel as much from the waist down as I used to. So I can walk along the beach near my house, and you're probably all sick of the videos on Facebook, and I can walk along the beach and go through a pile of shells, and some of those are sharp. Well, I'm barefoot, and I barely feel them, and sometimes I do get cuts. I don't even know I've got them. And that's just a general degradation of sensory feeling. The connection is just not being made to the brain in terms of this is ouch, this hurts, or this sand feels warm, or no. That's very, very subdued. And that's obviously translating into actual mechanical movement issues as well, which I knew because that's why I have a cane. Because when I have one of those wobbly days, I will use a cane as additional support. But this particular town with this different steps and things, which I am now being living with intent. I'm actually looking at, okay, yeah, this shop is different. Even though I may have been into it before, this one's different. It's got this step up. So okay, I'll try not to make everyone laugh, and I'll enter as gracefully as I can, as opposed to sprawling around all over the floor. So it's still subtle. It's still subtle. And yeah, sometimes I have the shakes primarily in my right hand, and usually someone else notices it before I do. And sometimes they get worried. I don't, because I'm used to it. But that does happen. But it certainly is not. I'm not going to sit at home on the couch and binge out on Netflix and get depressed about it. That's the absolute last thing anyone should do. Actually, disease or no disease, I don't think that's good for anyone. So it's just being in unfamiliar surroundings. You certainly, certainly notice the impact, the different impacts that the Parkinson's is having on me. Not life-threatening, no. Slow me down a bit, yes, for sure. And we'll just see where it goes. But just keep doing the exercises and keep that progression of the disease at bay as long as possible. That is the whole purpose of it. So that's really all I wanted to share for this week. I think that's long enough. And I will produce another podcast, if not within a week. Maybe cut me a bit of slack and give me 10 days or so. I'll sign off at this point, and please do listen to the podcasts. Spread the word about the podcasts. I do want to see more downloads from the podcast. So get the word out there. There's a very short mailing list that is starting to build. So you or a family member or a friend, you just get them to subscribe, or subscribe for them if you don't think they'll mind, and they don't have to listen to it. And it's available on all the major streaming platforms, so you can get it anywhere in the world. Apple, Spotify, iHeart, you name it. It's out there, or from the website itself. So please do that. And again, this is not a commercial venture. This is just really to help, I hope, others that may have this condition, and it's new to them like it is to me, and they're wondering, what can I expect? So that's what this is. And excuse me, I wish you all a good week. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you soon. Be safe, and be kind to a stranger, and be kind to each other, and be kind to yourself. Take care.